Thank you for coming tonight to the Windham Southeast School District Candidate Forum. I want to thank all of these awesome people who care about our schools for running as school directors. And I'd like to have everybody say their name and what they're running for, not do their spiel yet. And we'll go down the line from the end, and then I'm going to do a little spiel about where people can find what they're going to need before the vote. So let's start at the far end. You just say your name, what town you are from, and what position you're running for. And hold on.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tim Maysale. I'm from Brattleboro, and I'm running for the one-year position, I believe unopposed, in Brattleboro.
Hi, I'm Jackie Reynolds, and I'm running for a 2-year unopposed seat in Brattleboro. And this is Annabelle.
Hi, I'm Kimberly Price. I'm running for the 3-year position in Brattleboro.
I'm Emily Murphy-Core, and I'm also running for the 3-year position in Brattleboro.
My name is Tara Davis-Castine, and I'm from Putney, and I am in a contested race.
I'm Thomas Nolan from Dummerston, running for the 2-year term.
And we got regrets from Michelle Green, who will be running, I think, for the 3-year term from Dummerston. And we may be joined a little late by Liz Adams, who's running for the Putney 3-year term, or running from Putney for the 3-year term. So I just want to make sure everyone knows that the election is March 3rd. Folks can start voting early, it's my understanding, on February 12th. So isn't that tomorrow? And that one of the ways that this information can be shared is by Thursday, the 13th of February. It should be up, I believe, on BCTV, and the link is definitely going to be shareable on BCTV, so people can capture the link and email it out and get information out, because even though we have low audience participation, we can get this information out via the web and email. So I also wanted to make sure everyone knows that candidate questionnaires are now live on the Windham Southeast School District website. Everyone has filled out a candidate questionnaire, and we want to thank them for answering such great questions. So the format tonight will be 3 minutes from each person about who they are and why they're running. And so that will bring us close to half an hour, and then we'll open it to questions from the public. And I think that's it. Are there any questions? Okay. Then we'll have our timekeeper. Thank you to our current board chair, Christina Naylor, for being our timekeeper. And watch for her to give you your 1 minute left and 0 minute left. Okay. Hold on a second. So let's start with you.
Start here?
Yeah.
Okay. Do I just begin now?
Yes, please start.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. This is not as important as the November 4th election, but it's very important to our community. I'm Tim Maysale, and I've been involved in education my entire 40 years of professional life. My background, I have a doctorate in education, specializing in administration, planning, and social policy. Work experience, I've handled very large budgets, multi-million-dollar budgets. I've worked in, I've been a dean and provost and a professor at the college level, but I also have unique experience overseas. One of the unique experiences was being on a team that actually built a middle school in a refugee camp for Lao, Vietnamese, and Khmer in the Philippines. That was a wonderful experience. I'll say right off the bat that all of my major accomplishments in life have been in collaboration with others. That's the way it goes. Teamwork is vitally important to me. So I've handled budgets, I've handled student affairs cases at the college level, which I think would be pretty similar in their challenges to what the school board would handle. I've been a dean of a teacher training program, and so I appreciate good teaching. I really appreciate good teaching after being a substitute teacher in the Hinsdale 4th and 5th grades last year. That was one of the toughest jobs I've had. I've been an educational researcher. I have, well, let me get to my values. In addition to basic skills, I think that every school should teach the 4 C's of the 21st century, which are critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creativity, collaboration, communication, and critical thinking. And that's already 1 minute left. My goodness. As a board member, I would really want to work with others on preparing the schools for the climate emergency, which is inevitable, maintaining the distinct qualities that each and every school in the district has, and continue to work with those already on the school board. It's, I think, thanks to people like Christina, David Scholes, Emily Kaur, it's been a very successful school committee, and I want to continue to build the trust that we've built with teachers and the schools and parents. It's there's a lot of work to do. One of the things I think about is last year there was a 9% decrease in the student population in Vermont. Our district was fortunate to have seen pretty flat growth, but we are going to face, and sometime, maybe not next year, but we're going to have to handle budget decreases perhaps, and that's going to be a challenge. So my name is Tim Maciel, and I approve this message.
My name's Jackie Reynolds. I'm a rather new Brattleboro resident. I'm from the Boston area, but I've been here about 4 years. I have a son who's in kindergarten at Green Street. I have sweet little Annabelle who goes to neighborhood schoolhouse and is 11 months old. And I guess Annabelle is the reason that I started to become interested in becoming a school board member, because Annabelle has got Down syndrome. And so we have started to meet a lot of people in the local special needs community and have made some friends and have heard some complaints about how maybe special education is going for some of these families. So we took it upon ourselves to start talking to a lot of parents and see what was really going on and coming to meetings and things of that nature. And what we learned from that, mainly, other than complaints that people have, is that people are either reluctant to come forward, or maybe they don't know the right avenue to talk about these things that they're experiencing. And Annabelle and I like to come forward and talk, so we thought maybe we could help with that. And then on top of that, a few years ago, I was a foster parent to a couple of different children. So I feel that I have really relevant experience with regard to many children in our area, unfortunately, who've suffered trauma, have had a good amount of trauma-informed type training, and then actual dealing with these situations and things with DCF, and just a lot of things that you have to unpack in that kind of situation. And then we're also we worked with early education services, and still do, for support in our home, because we thought it would be a great tool for Annabelle, and it is. And I was on the policy council for a while doing that. And I feel like I'm rambling a little bit, but the main point is that what I've noticed in all of the dealings that I've had with different people in the school system, whether it be little kids, children involved in DCF, or just at the school level that my son is at, is that I think that there's a real lack of parent involvement. And again, I don't know if it's because I feel that people maybe are reluctant to get involved. For example, I'm running in an uncontested race, and I'm not sure why that is. So I'm hoping that people will want to get involved either through me, like maybe people will communicate more about what their issues are and I can help represent them, but really encourage people, because I just know so many people that have so much to say, but I don't see them coming forward to try to help. And that's really what I think my role could be. And I hope that made sense. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Kimberly Price. I'm from Brattleboro. I was actually born and raised here. I left right after college, as many college students do, moved to New York and Connecticut, and then came back probably about 10 years ago to raise my kids because this was a fabulous place to live growing up. And there were lots of opportunities as a student and a child living here. I was previously on the Brattleboro Town School Board for about 4 years. I've worked with Emily the last year, and we did some really good work. Worked with David, and actually worked with lots of people in here in the audience. Did not run for the merged board after last spring. My youngest was graduating from high school, and I knew it was going to be a crazy time getting him ready and off to college. But I realized with all of the hard work that we had done that I actually missed it. I missed working with, don't laugh at me, Christina. I missed working with all of the administrators and the job that they do and the hard work that they put in, the staff and everything that they do. And I felt that I had more that I could give. I've worked, obviously, on the Brattleboro Town School Board. I've worked on the SU board. I was on that. I've worked on the finance committee. I was on the policy council with EES for a while. So I've been in all aspects of as a board member, and I feel like, again, I have more that I can give.
Thanks. So my name is Emily Murphy Core, and I'm from Brattleboro. And so originally, I'm actually from Western Massachusetts, not too far south of here. But my professional experience is mostly in education. So I started my career as a teacher, actually in a Montessori school before I had my teaching license, teaching students Spanish and adapting the curriculum to, because Montessori curriculum doesn't traditionally have Spanish, so adapting it so that it could. And then I was a special ed teacher in the public setting for 7th through 9th grade students who had fairly significant disabilities. But I realized there wasn't a lot of ways for my voice to be heard in policymaking at the school level. And so what I wanted to do was look at how teacher voice could be more integrated into policymaking. So I went back to grad school and got a grad degree in education policy, and then worked at a think tank as a director, specifically around how to get teacher voice and school committee voice into more and more into district level and administration policymaking. So thinking about strategic planning and creating policies that really, when they roll out, have a better effectiveness because they have the voices of many. And I really truly believe that the more diverse voices we hear, the better the solutions we can come up with for problems that exist. So now I moved to Brattleboro, and I run a retreat center with my husband, a yoga and meditation research and retreat center called Say2 Vermont. And I was on the Brattleboro Town School Board, as Kim mentioned, for a short term, and now currently serve on the WSESD board. So a few of the things that are really exciting that are going on currently on the WSESD board that I'm so happy to have been a part of include, we're really looking a lot at equity. I'm the chair of the Programmatic and Performance Equity Subcommittee of the board. And right now we're really trying to think about, we've come together as a bunch of schools and now we're unified. And so how do we make sure that we're creating programming or expanding programming in an equitable fashion, but not thinking in the direction of everything must be equal, because we know there's a lot of diversity in the schools and a lot of hard work has already gone in to kind of solicit the input of communities to create those programs. So we really have to start thinking, or we are trying to start thinking, okay, what does equity mean across a district? Are all people having access to the programming that makes their educational experience full and high quality? So I would say that's one of the things that's top of my mind currently. And I hope, even if I'm not on the board next year, that it's one of the things that the board can really pursue, because I think it'll really impact how we think about budgeting and how we can improve our schools from being really great to even better.
My name is Tara Davis Castine, and I moved to Putney when I was in second grade. I graduated from Putney Central School in 1995 and from BUHS in 99. I currently I'm a working mom of 2 boys who attend Putney Central. And I am very active within the PCS community and the PTO. I'm on the leadership committee. And I am very active in collaboration with the school for my boys because of their behavior issues. So 504 planning, IEP planning has me in the school often talking to teachers and to the group there on those activities for my boys. I have worked with children and teens in outdoor education settings and the FFA, Nature's Classroom, programs at resorts for children, day camps, sort of things. I currently am a purchasing director for a local manufacturer. So my job does not come from a child background, but I love children. I've worked with them in the past. I am very passionate about making sure that when I'm on the board, I am bringing Putney values and also looking at the values of the different towns and what they expect for their schools. And along with Emily, the equity part overall, but making sure that we're evaluating the values that the community is bringing and would like to see within their school walls. I love to learn new things and research, so I'm not always going to know the right answer, but I'm very happy to take a look at what's going on in our community, talk to parents, talk to administrators, look at the laws that are happening at this moment in time and how they're interacting with our daily lives within the school, and try to make decisions that make our schools better for our students. Thank you.
Okay, my head is so clogged, so just go along with me. Everything I've written for the website and everything is just like... So this is an attempt. I'm a longtime resident of Putney. My daughters attended Putney Central School from 1984 to 1997. During that time, I helped out in the school in various ways, so it was a great way to learn about that school. My granddaughter is now a student there. I was a part of early childhood teachers that met regularly with the kindergarten teacher, a school board member, and others to support a position for an early childhood outreach staff. I advocated for this position before the school board and at town meeting. This program led to the creation of a full-day pre-K located in Putney Central School. It was the first in the state, and it was a collaboration between Head Start and Putney Central. And at that time, I was collaborating with Head Start, so I got to know lots and lots of parents. The merge board is off to a very good start. WSESD has the opportunity to not devolve into what is happening in some other parts of the state, pitting town against town. I have the ability to represent the town that I am from while simultaneously being able to think of all the kids. Being able to think creatively about how to meet the needs of all children has been honed by my career as an early childhood teacher and protective services provider. Scaling up my thinking is something I've been doing during this first year as a merged district. I've attended almost every meeting. The board has a great deal of work ahead of it. I have retired from my career as an early childhood teacher and have no other obligations, so I have plenty of time to devote to this. I also plan to continue my activity as a member of a statewide group and stay on top of what is happening in the General Assembly regarding education, as well as the State Board of Education. Social justice has been embedded in my values for decades. A long-held belief of mine is that children are our future and deserve the best education that we can give them, as well as spark a passion for lifelong learning that I possess. Other qualities that I have that could be an asset for the Merge Board are patience, curiosity, collaboration skills, love of learning, doing research, listening to diverse perspectives in order to learn and inform decisions, critical thinking skills, and reflecting on all the gathered information to make a decision.
Hello, I'm Thomas Nolan from Dummerston. I also moved up here from Boston about just over 5 years ago, and very happy. One of the best decisions of my life. I'm going to read something that's going to be in the Views of Dummerston publication to kind of cover everything, because otherwise I'd probably forget something important. So currently I'm serving as one of the 2 Dummerston residents on the unified WSESD School District Board. That's repetitive, sorry. I would be honored to continue in this role. After the initial stresses brought about by Act 46, members of the board have acted in good faith to come together in a way and find a way of addressing the anxieties that resulted from this legislation. I believe that we have made great progress at unifying with the goal of serving every child in the district fully. We have also worked at length on the proposed resurfacing of Natowich Field. While this issue has been contentious for many, I'm confident that we'll be able to resolve it with a 21st century mindset that works with nature and recognizes the emergency of climate change, keeps students safe, is financially responsible, and provides improved facilities for students. Currently, I chair the board's Climate Crisis Task Force. In this group, board members and concerned residents from the area meet to review the district's impact on our climate and the proactive steps we can take to address this urgent problem. Our work deals with issues such as curriculum, procurement, food, transportation, and more. We report back to the board with what's currently going well and how to improve what needs work. As well, I serve on the board's diversity committee, which develops policies and practices to foster an environment of support and respect for students of all backgrounds. I'm proud of the work that these 2 groups are doing. Personally, I'm the father of a 2-year-old boy who I plan on sending to the Dummerston School when the time comes. My intent is to do everything to ensure that he and all other students and children of the district are provided with the best resources and learning environment that we can offer. To me, public education is perhaps the greatest investment that we can make in the health and happiness of our children as they grow. It lets them achieve their potential, and when done right, teaches them how to think, not merely what to think. Towns and regions that neglect their public education systems suffer greatly over the generations, and I'll work to make sure that this doesn't happen to our region. We're currently living in a climate where public education, which is a fundamental right of all children, is being threatened, told to live with less, and attacked at the federal level. Our responsibility as a society is to provide for our children's needs. If I'm allowed to continue serving, I will strongly and happily defend public education.
So let's give a round of applause for all of these candidates and everything that was great. I realized I did a thing that I always chastise others for, and I didn't introduce myself, I don't think. So I just wanted to say I'm Jamie Comtois, and I had served on the Putney Central School Board and helped during the transition process as we moved into the Merge District. So that's my history and participation in this process. So I want to make sure that we have questions from the audience. I think the way the microphones will work best is if you have a question, I'll call on you, you come up, speak in the mic, and then I will allow folks to answer the question. The challenge we have with 8 candidates is that we'll need concise answers so that we can get to as many questions as possible. So let's keep it at 1 minute per answer. I forgot that piece of the timekeeping, so I can take that over if you want, Christina. So 1 minute per person for the answer, and then we can go down the line. So let's see if there are any questions from the audience. Go ahead, Jody. I'm going to start the microphone down.
If I blow you away, I'm sorry. My question is, Jody Normando Dummerston. Thank you, Kim. I forget that. My question is, I guess some of you would be new to the board, but you can answer in that way too, what you could bring. And the ones that are on the board is what the board is doing as far as the climate crisis is concerned.
I'll begin. What I would bring is years of experience in following the climate crisis. I'm a member of Brattleboro Common Sense, which has been focused on the climate crisis and what the town can do about it. I've been involved in select board meetings about climate crisis. But from an educational point of view, I admire what Hilltop Montessori is doing, not just infusing their curriculum with climate change issues, but really centering their curriculum all around climate change. I see it as the big issue for children in the future. So if elected, I would want to serve on the climate change subcommittee and see and talk with others about what we can do.
So I would be new to the board, and where I like to always try to get more people involved, climate change would be another area that I would want to do that, but maybe in a little bit of a different way. As I said, Annabelle attends neighborhood schoolhouse. We're a longtime neighborhood family. My son used to go there. I sub there. I try to be very involved with the school. And every Friday when they have a half day, most of the older students go down to Pliny Park and protest because of climate change, and they're really organized about it and really enthusiastic about it, but they also have a lot of ideas for things that could be done around the school and probably in other schools. And I think that's a great model for every school in our district, particularly with some of the older kids. So I would definitely want to be involved, but work toward getting kids involved because, you know, climate change wasn't a thing when I was a kid in school. It wasn't something we talked about. So I've had to learn along the way, as I'm sure most of us had, but these kids have grown up with it. And if we can help fuel the fire that they have and support their ideas in the future, then I think it will lead to a better future outcome for everybody.
It's driving me crazy. I would be new to the merge board. The Brattleboro Town School Board had actually not really addressed the issue at our level. I think that it would be something that it should be introduced in terms of curriculum at all ages, from pre-K up. And it's definitely something that the students want to learn about and want to discuss and want to participate in, as seen when we've had protests. A lot of our student body has participated with marches and similar events, but it's definitely something that it should be part of the curriculum.
So I'm currently on the school board, so I can say a little bit about what we're currently do, but some visions for the future. So this past fall, I actually made a motion to create the climate committee that's established now. I'm not on the committee though. I have a lot of other committee work, but Thomas actually chairs that committee, and they're doing actually work to integrate students. I know at least one student is on the committee, and to think more about the curriculum. So I hope that that work continues. Additionally, I see a way for the overall board to really look at climate change as twofold. I mean, there's many options, but one is in sustainable development. So we have two ongoing projects, the Academy School expansion and the field study evaluation we're doing. So thinking about sustainability in those cases, as well as in future endeavors. Additionally, my idea is that we have now a school committee representative from the high school who is on the committee at each meeting. It would be really lovely if, to get more students involved, if those folks actually spoke a little bit, maybe at the start of each meeting, on what they're kind of seeing in the school and some ideas they may have in Time's Up. So.
Tara Davis Castine from Putney, and regarding the climate issues facing our world, I would look for values on sustainability and longevity of education for teaching students how to care for their environment and make choices that impact their daily life. Working at Nature's Classroom, one of the things that we did with the kids was we had an ORT program, and it was how not to waste food. And this might seem like a small thing, but in our environment where food is such an important thing for everyone to have, how do we take only what we're going to eat? How do we grow? How do we compost? How do we change what we're doing so that we are involved in that process? And I hope to bring some education that I learned at Nature's Classroom and just my love of learning to the process of climate control within the board. Thank you.
Well, I support any curriculum that deals with this. Putney Central School saw a huge decrease in the amount of food being thrown out after we started our in-house program. What is thrown out is carted out back and composted now. A lot of the schools have switched to wood pellet boilers, which definitely help with climate issues. In my own home, which is a 3-generation household, we compost everything that you can possibly compost to bring to Project Cow, because bears have just shredded my compost bins. And it is amazing what you can bring there. Not just food, but used tissues, paper towels, and the list goes on and on. So our trash has been cut down to almost nothing. And as Nevaeh's friends come over, they learn about what you can compost and they take it home with them. So that's one way to help the kids out. Thanks.
So I'm Tom Nolan from Dummerston again. So I have a lot of things politically that I'm passionate about, but I would say that the climate crisis we're in is by far my number one, because it's the one thing we can't undo later. It's one thing that we have to work on right now, or the damage will be too much to get past. So I am the chair of the Climate Crisis Task Force. The biggest obstacle we came across to start off is we were looking over everything that the school board is doing, how the school district is doing, how it touches the question of climate change. And it was overwhelming because everything you can think of tends to have something that comes back. Curriculum, are we teaching it enough to the kids about how important it is? How we procure things for the school, the food that we serve, everything seems to come back in transportation. So the thing that we've tried to focus on is, okay, well, what specific policies can we propose that will have an actual effect? What can we do instead of talking about, oh, this is terrible, this is filling us with anxiety? What policies can we propose? And that's what we're currently in the process of doing. We're crafting actual policies that we can recommend to the board.
Are there other questions, or thank you all for your answers, and are there other questions from the audience? Please come ahead to the mic.
Hi, my name is Summer Birch. I'm a parent of a Brattleboro Oak Grove student. So my question is, how are we going to make after school and just school-based extracurricular activities more equitable across all the elementary schools? We have probably the smallest after-school programming of any of the schools. And so I'd like to see more things, more opportunity for my children, maybe comparable to what they have in other schools. So, like, what part will the board play in sort of finding ways to make after-school activities and enrichment, like getting, programming during school hours a little more equitable between the schools? Thanks.
Well, in preparation for the work on the board, I've been visiting every school, and I was talking to the principal at Green Street, They have a fantastic after-school curriculum. They're doing a lot. And this is the kind of thinking that I hope people will have, collaborative thinking. Green Street is doing really well, and I would hope that other schools would meet and look at share what they're doing to share good ideas. As far as the cost goes, well, again, the board has the challenge of preserving the unique qualities of each school. Some schools have a great pre-kindergarten program. Others have great after-school program. Each school has something unique, and the last thing we want is uniformity, but we do want equity. And I can't give you a specific answer to how to improve it, but I think if we put our heads together, we can come up with some nice ideas.
I promise I'm not just copying your answer here. And I know I sound like a giant cheerleader for all the schools that I'm involved with, but I really am. My son goes to Green Street, my nephews go, and we're really impressed with the after-school program. And I did try to set up a meeting with the principal to talk more about that, because I know that other schools don't have it and we do. I have yet to do that. But along the same lines, certainly we're not all going to do the exact same thing at every school because the culture is different. But however they're making the model work for the after-school program, we should all look at that and see how we can spread that out. And I don't know the specifics yet, but since we have one school that I think a lot of people will agree is doing it well, then the answer is to talk to them and see what we're doing and see what we can all learn from that and try to spread that everywhere. Thanks.
I do want to second that, where the Principal Kaufman has worked with Principal Spino, who is at Green Street, and I know that they have a good relationship. Principal Kaufman, this is her first year, so I know she's working to, get everything organized at the school. But it's something, a lot of times too, you have to have the volunteers to do those after school programs. You have to have the teachers or the parents that will come in.
It seems like some of the schools have teachers or staff members who volunteer for those. How is it that some schools sort of have a little bit more of that than others? I don't know whether it's built into the budget or how that works. Repeat that just because they might.
Sure. The question was how do those schools have all of those volunteers and are able to have those after school programs, correct? Sort of. And I apologize, I don't know the budget wise right off the top of my head in terms of what was or was not budgeted. But how you get the volunteers, that's a good question to go to Principal Spino and say, what type of incentives are you having? Are you offering, or how are you getting your staff to volunteer? And that's an easy question that we're able to have. And I know with the equity committee, that's something that, you can't have the exact programs in every school, but with the equity, we'd be able to get more where it's needed.
So Samara, I really appreciate your question. It was one that came up actually not related to Oak Grove this year, but I understand the concern actually came up related to Putney and a program that was in existence and people didn't have after school care. And so it was handed off to the committee that I chair to say what can we do about expanding some opportunities? So we started to look into, first we thought it would be easy. We're like, okay, how about we just look at how much funding's put in? And the funding was like, my God, now we're co-curricular. We have so many different ways we fund things. So when we started to look at the funding, we realized, okay, we have to include sometimes transportation. We have to include this. There's all these other measures that go into it. And there are school cultures like at Green Street where the teachers are very involved. And that's been kind of Mark Spino's pet project, right? Like he's developed it over, 10 years. But it doesn't mean we shouldn't innovate and really think critically about how we can bring this more broadly. At this current point, though, my hope is in the next month, or probably two more meetings, we'll be able to present out a little data on the after-school care. I know my time is up, I'll finish. And just to think a little bit more about how can we paint a little picture of how this looks equity-wise? And then we can start thinking about, okay, how can we develop cultures or create funding streams that would match to that? That sounds easy, but I think it's going to be hard.
Tara Castine from Putney. Wow, after school care is so important, and I fully agree with your statement. How can the board take a look at that? And that's something that I know Emily's group has been working on. I've sat in on a few meetings. It's something that I hope to continue the discussion, because in Putney, we lost our after school program. We've been kind of struggling with finding something that works. We have some sports activities that are happening, but in terms of the aftercare program, it's not as rigorous as some of the other programs within the district. And I do agree we need to take a look at it, and we need to think about not making them all the same, because I don't think that's a possibility, but what can we do as a board to fill the needs of the community that attend that school and fill the values. So I look forward to looking at that issue.
Okay, well, everybody's pretty much said everything. I would like to point out that the principal at Putney Central called the state, and he had an instant response, and they were able to open a program on September 30th. And they hired, I'm guessing, the first 2 bodies that came through the door, who need some guidance that I've offered if they would like it. They're very limited in the space they're allowed in the school, which really detracts tremendously from what they're able to do. So that needs to be addressed. And the other chunk that, since everybody already talked about everything, nobody addressed the enrichment piece. And I think that's really important. I don't know where our schools stand with enrichment for kids who need it. I know the school system failed my older daughter miserably way back when, and her only option was to skip 2 grades. So anyway, that's something I want to look into.
All right, Thomas Nolan from Dummerston again. That's an extremely good question, because I'm on the board and I hadn't really thought of it myself that deeply. I hadn't really addressed it myself. So what I can say is I will educate myself a lot more on how the different schools compare to each other as far as extracurricular and after-school programs. We've been talking a lot about within schools as far as making sure all students get equal access to after-school programs and things like that, and especially with sports as far as gender equity. But I hadn't really investigated enough, and I will. And I'll ask questions and listen.
Thank you. Are there other questions from the audience?
Paul Normandale from Dummerston. First of all, I want to commend all of you for running. There are going to be 10 of you doing a job that 20 or 25 people used to do before. So the time commitment on your part, I really admire your willingness to do that. My question is more of a comment, but kind of a comment question. The greater Brattleboro area has quite a diversity in population, in students, and in levels of ability. And we hear a lot about the support that's given to disadvantaged students, but we don't hear much about what the gifted or the students who excel. And I would like to know more, and as a community member, I would like to know more about the broad spectrum of the approaches to education. After a while, you sort of get the thing that we're only trying to teach to the middle, but we're trying to bring the disadvantaged up to the middle. But what are we doing with people who are who excel in school. So, thank you.
So I think what I understand the question to be is, do we have anything specially to focus on students who are excelling? I don't know of any, but what I can say is from my personal experience when I was in high school, something I didn't like, or it was throughout middle school as well. So I grew up around Boston, the suburbs, and one thing I didn't like is some of the gifted students who are at the higher, doing the best in the on Wednesdays or Thursdays, they would go study at a different school that was just for them. At the time, I thought that was a very terrible thing to do. I thought that was, it seemed to me very unfair and very, I thought it was to the detriment of the other students who were not. I thought it seemed a little elitist. I thought it seemed counterproductive.
I didn't mean that question to be an elitist type.
No, I'm not saying you are. I'm saying from my experience when I was growing up, and I did fairly well, but some of these kids who went there, I thought that was very strange. So what I can say is I would not want something like that. That's all.
Okay, well, the high school's changed a great deal since my oldest daughter was there, and they can now take AP classes and so on and so forth, and you can take extra classes if you want to graduate early. So that's good, but I'm not aware of what's going on in the elementary schools, and so I really need to find out how we're approaching those kids, because traditionally they have been ignored, and that's not a good thing, and it can lead to behavior problems. So, kids will start acting out because they're bored. My daughter survived much of Putney Central by reading on her desk. The whole, had her book open in a desk and was reading and answering questions, whatever question was thrown at her, and got out of that school as soon as she could. So I'm really interested in the elementary piece of that one.
This is an interesting one for me. As a Putney resident, I have two boys in Putney. My boys are in 2nd and 6th grade, which are the two biggest classes at Putney Central School. My son's 2nd grade class has readers reading 99 words per minute and others that are reading 2 words per minute. And that is a huge delta in a classroom of 29 children. And this year we were lucky enough to get 2 classrooms for that grade. And so one of the things that's really important for me is taking a look at education for every child, whether they're needing help, like my oldest with an IEP, or my youngest who's reading 99 words per minute. And making sure that we're looking at ways in which each student can learn and grow and be the best person that they can, because we're making little people who are going to grow up to be big people and have an impact and a job in this world. And so it's so important that we teach values and how to survive, but also just looking at the complete education that we're giving them, which means helping everybody.
So the thing that came to mind when you asked the question about, broad programming, especially for students who may be achieving above the average, was just a title of a book. The book doesn't actually relate. It's called Gifts Differing. And it was on the creation of personality types, which has since been outdated because it's like maybe from the 1950s. So there's new theories on that. But the reason why I bring it up is I think on the current school board, we have had some special education issues come up, which we would consider to not, although gifted education is actually a special education concern. But I think people were more focused on maybe a different population than gifted students. But when I think gifts differing, I think, okay, creating school environments that are broadly responsive to all students. And I think a lot of the topics that come up on the school board actually are broadly responsive to most students, because we're not really always dealing with just a special education issue. After school is a great one. It's all students, and giving them diverse opportunities. But I would say one way to specifically think about gifted education or ensuring those kids get what they need to feel enthusiastic about schooling is, and I know my time's up, but keeping class size down. We're lucky to have such small schools in our districts, many of them, but it is important as we get to the middle and high school to think about what are the class sizes so we can differentiate, because there's a lot of pressure placed on teachers then if the classes get too large. So that's just one opportunity.
Both of my boys, they've obviously both graduated now, but I have one that was an IEP and then also one that was more educationally gifted. But they both, when they went to academy school, they were able to participate in the Maple Leaf writing project, and that my youngest participated in that, and he wrote a book. It was something that they could use to, develop their writing skills. And they both participated in the Math Olympiad, which was, they were both morning programs that they'd go to school early and they'd work on math problems. And they were able to have harder problems that they couldn't always figure out, but it made them work and think a little differently. Obviously, the high school has more programs with the dual enrollment, in the AP classes, but it's definitely something that the board needs to look at for equity and for all of our students across the board.
I think it's a really excellent point that I hadn't considered before tonight, but in the last few minutes thinking about it, I realized that I've heard plenty in my short time in Brattleboro about students demonstrating a superior athletic performance and also some art and music. I've heard a lot of cheering about that, but I haven't heard anything about anybody performing well academically, and certainly those kids are out there, and maybe it's not as popular or whatever it is. So I don't know anything about the programs, but I know that certainly there are kids that are performing very well, that is pretty important. We should probably celebrate them equally. And what I do have from my own experience in high school, I took a bunch of AP classes and remember some of it, maybe a tiny bit of AP calculus, but I tutored all throughout my senior year, and the subjects I tutored in, I remember very well, a lot of statistics. And, and I also think there was value for the students that were struggling that I got to tutor and some of my peers tutored from, academically and also socially. So I don't know where we stand at the high school or any of the schools with that, but I know it was a great thing for me and people that I know. So that would probably be something to unpack. And again, I'm glad you brought it up because I just hadn't considered it at all.
Great question, Dan. It brings to mind assessment. How do we know which students are gifted in different areas? So assessment is part of it. Having been in teacher training colleges, I know that this is one of the things that we teach good teachers, how to work with diverse groups of students. There are different ways. Some of you may have heard of design thinking or project-based thinking, experiential learning, where small groups of students work well, diverse students. But it takes really quality teaching to pull off good pedagogy. The other thing, at the high school level, I am very supportive of programs that help students get into college. I want to ensure that our high school has sufficient number of AP classes, for example, and college track programs. But a lot of it gets back to what Emily said, which I couldn't agree more with, and that's having small classes helps tremendously to identify gifted students and to help those gifted students work well with others. And I yield my time to the moderator.
Tim, you're the second person tonight who called me Dan, and I'm getting at the age where I'm known by my son. It's not so bad.
Thank you for your answers to those questions. I want to just tell you what my assumptions on time are. I'm looking at 7 o'clock. My goal was that we would depart by 7:30, but we never made an agreement. So if you do the math, that means about 3 more questions. So I just want to make sure that we're all in agreement that that's where we're going, because we didn't have an agreement when we started. Work? And can someone not stay until 7:30? Okay. So I also want to ask a question. So I am trying to be ethical about this. So I'm wanting permission to ask a question at some point. But I'd like to ask, what is a question from the audience?
My name is Hannah. I have 2 kids. I am curious about your experience or knowledge about social emotional development and support in our schools. And some people have touched on their experience with special education, and certainly there's some overlap there. But in general, you know, I would just like to hear any thoughts or ideas you have about that. Thank you.
Sorry, can you explain a little bit more what you mean by what you're looking for? Our experience in social emotional development.
Social emotional support in schools.
Okay.
It's typically something that is done more in younger grades or even preschool, and there isn't as much of it I see in the elementary and especially not middle and high school. I think that, and there is some information or some advocacy work that's that's in Vermont and nationally too. So I'd love to hear about anybody's ideas. I have some concerns about special education because both my kids receive special education type services, and I think that it's something that we all need to look at and start talking about. Yeah.
Okay. I'll do my best. I mean, I can give you my background.
It's open, yeah.
Yes, I can give you my background as my experience in dealing with educating children. I don't have very little, but my part-time job is I teach Chinese children how to speak English as a second language, and I deal with children who go between, it shouldn't be that young, but 3 years old and maybe teenagers. What I can gather from that, or what I can take from that, is different children have different emotional states that I'm dealing with. Some have, how do I put this? It's a very open-ended question. I would say that the emotional treatment of a child is very, I'm sorry, this is a very difficult question. I'm trying to gather from my experience any way that I have anything to add to this. I'm at a loss. I'm sorry. Sure.
He's going to take some time to think.
Yeah, that's a hard one.
Yeah.
Very open-ended.
I'll say that I have learned so much as a parent, and I didn't know anything about social emotional learning until my kids were in school. So.
Okay, well, I was an early childhood teacher, and it was a home-based program, so it was small. It made it very, very easy to teach social emotional stuff because their kids are copycats at that age. So they would copy the language that I would use, and it worked like a charm, and they got it. Putney Central has PBIS, and they put quite a bit of emphasis on social emotional skills, at least in the 1st through 5th grades. I haven't heard so much about the middle school. They're kind of off by themselves. I think that bullying still occurs. I'm not sure how much. We're looking for some statistics on that. I have noticed going into the school, we also have an intensive services classroom at Putney Central, and I've seen kids applaud some of those children doing something that was difficult for them to do. So I have no idea about anybody else.
Tara Castine Putney. This is something that speaks to me as a mom with 2 boys with ADHD, impulse control, oppositional defiance behavior. They're kind of very involved in my child's environment. And so I'm constantly learning about ways that I can help the teachers help my children in the classroom, especially with the impulse control. When you go through school and you just punch somebody because they're next to you, it's not cool. And so how do you teach someone the skills needed to be a community member within their classroom? And so it is something that our schools need to do better, and it is one of the things that is an issue item for me. I have listed special education and behavior intervention with a positive outlook on that. I think it's an important thing that we as a school board do need to look at, and how to address those within the schools. And I look forward to delving a little bit more into that. Thank you.
So I know, I think actually throughout the district, but I'm very familiar with the Brattleboro Public Schools, having actually just heard a presentation too by Academy around PBIS and the multi-tiered system of support that we have going on. It sounds like also Putney has it, so I'm assuming it might be district-wide or at least being scaled. And it seems to me that that's been functioning fairly well, at least for creating less behavior incidents. But social emotional learning, to me, we kind of, not that we missed the mark, but if we're just focusing on PBIS and multi-tiered system of support, that's not all social emotional learning is. So, I mean, I understand that has a really important place in these kind of more severe circumstances. But soft skills like grit and determination, which fall under social emotional learning, my hope would be is that they're really integrated into all curriculums. I feel, I mean, for me personally, I'm really hoping that the schools are functioning in a way that ensures that all children and adult learners too have the ability to transform their lives. So I know I've seen a lot of signs up that are around these soft skills, but honestly, I don't have a lot of experience in the classroom knowing how they're teaching grit. But I do think it's a really important issue, and maybe too we could hear more. If you want to come to a school board meeting, I'd love to hear a little bit more about certain circumstances, and maybe we could support that.
Hi. I don't have any educational experience with that. The experience that I have is just from being on the school board and listening to teachers and the administrators and the professionals speaking about it, and what they're doing with the PBIS and the multi-tiered system. But then there's also, I know at Oak Grove, they've had emotional support dogs come in, and some of the schools, just as a way for students that if they are having a hard time, they know, okay, I can take a step back, I can go and regroup myself, regroup how I feel and how I can interact with my fellow students and my teachers. So I apologize, I don't have more for you on that.
It's a really good question. We know that success in the classroom depends largely on factors that are outside the classroom. Some kids come from home environments that are so difficult beyond their imagination. This is why it's not just important to have counselors in a school, but to have really good counselors and social workers. I was just reading an article a couple of months ago about how, by whatever measurement, schools that have adequate counseling do better than schools that don't. No brainer. So that's all I have to say on that. I look forward to learning more. Special ed is not my particular field of expertise, but I have such respect for special ed teachers.
So I'm taking license and asking my question, so I'm not the last question. So, yeah. Oh, did you not get a chance? Okay.
The only thing I can say is it seems like it kind of, there you go. The only thing I can kind of see that kind of has anything to do with that is we talk a lot about restorative practices on the board, which I'm very glad to hear, because when I was in school, there was none of that. And I think that's the way to deal with children as far as having them develop emotionally in a less combative or less punitive if you do something wrong way. So that's all.
So I'm actually going to put the mic down and go speak over here. Clear change of power here. So my name's Jamie Comtois, and I'm a mom of a 6-year-old at Putney Central. And one of the reasons I ran for the school board was I was watching the videotapes during the process of the alternative governance study of the discussion about merging the districts. And I saw one of the folks from central office encourage folks on the AGS committee to not allow the towns to vote prior to a school closure. And I remember thinking how proud I was of having a small community school. And so one of the pieces that has been really important to me in the service I've done on the school board is how, as a body, do we make sure that we're committing to each other? And I've heard a lot of that. How do we commit to each other, to hear each other, to study what's going on in the unique schools and communities? And so I am looking at that history, and I'm now looking at the fact that there is potentially, I think, according to rumors, maybe $900,000 to $2 million of special ed funding that might not be coming in the next couple of years to Windham Southeast School District. And so I am somebody who thinks about, I don't play chess, but I know about chess, and I know you're supposed to think a couple plays out. And so I'm thinking to myself, how do you deal with the fact that we're up against our tax cap, up against whatever we call that? What is it? Excess spending threshold? Okay, we're up against our excess spending threshold. We've got potentially a $2 million downshift of costs of special education when that's such a critical issue to our communities and schools. And then you have us all looking at each other and going, what's going to give? And so I really want to hear from you all what's going to give from your perspective. But in the sense of, how do we make that commitment to each other to not do what other communities all over the state have done? And I was looking, if you saw me frantically looking, I was looking for my data, and I did some research not too long ago that there were like 10 schools that have closed since Act 46 passed, and 14 that have merged, or 14 that have like downsized and consolidated. And so the real reality of the goal of Act 46 in reducing education spending is that we will ultimately look at each other and make the decision on whose school will close, whose staff will be laid off. So I want to figure that out together. I don't want to get mad at each other. I don't want to accuse each other. I just want to figure it out together. So can you help me figure that out in your answer to my question?
Minute doesn't work.
You're first, Thomas.
Yeah, great. So part of the reason why I even got involved in this in the first place is because of my concern with Act 46. I see that it's a political movement to try to get us to reduce instead of expand our public education expenditures. Absolutely the wrong thing to do. Not just because it affects the children's education, but it's poisonous for a community. If you start reducing public education expenditures, it's one thing to try to cut costs, and that's absolutely what everyone does, especially the people who want to preserve public education. You want to reduce needless cost. But it's coming from a different, I think, a wrong-headed point of view. I think the whole matter to reduce expending money on education. So as far as what do we do now that we're merged against our will, the first thing we had to do was get over mistrust that the different communities had. Like, everyone thinks that, okay, I have to fight against, if I'm from Brattleboro, I have to fight against Dummerston and Putney and vice versa. We're merged, we have to trust each other a little bit, and as someone from Dummerston, I want to preserve every school, and I want to find ways to expand what we have, not find ways to constrict it. So we just have to trust each other.
that's a primary reason I'm running for the school board. I was very involved in trying to get the legislature to change Act 49, and we had some success there. Right now, our schools are in a good position, and we know through the public pre-Ks that are in schools, they're full with waiting lists. All the community-based programs are basically full, and you can't get a child in. So for the next, 5 years or so, the outlook is pretty good. I would like to draw attention to something that the school closure amendment that we all voted in, I would like to see that renewed when the 2 years are up. But I don't think that Brattleboro understood that they might be at risk of closing a school too down the line if their school population dropped. Like Oak Grove could be a potential closed thing. And no, don't wave that card at me. This is too complicated. So I'm really committed to, our board has done a great job so far, and I'm really committed to continuing that job, as well as keep an eye on the legislature. The special ed funding is between, what I understand, $750,000 and $1 million. There is a new, it isn't in place yet, but they commissioned a study to look at how we weight per pupil spending. And as I was reading through the 196 pages, that could have really positive implications for WSESU. So the longer we can go being together will make the longer term, I think, less vicious. And maybe, who knows, maybe we'll grow.
Tara Castine Putney. I was answering the questionnaire, and that was part of my thought process, was what comes next. And things that were really important are the values and the accountability of the schools that we're going to be representing. How do we do that to make sure every child is learning and being in an environment that's safe, healthy, giving them the best education that they can have? And I came to the realization that we're probably going to have some hard decisions or hard discussions ahead of us. And as long as we're having an open conversation and learning all the facts and looking at all the angles, I'm confident that with the help of the community and the board that I potentially could serve with, that we will make decisions that help our children learn in the most safest and best environment that we can give them.
So the financial constraints that you speak about could be a pending reality, as the educational landscape is always shifting, and sometimes not to our financial favor. I guess one thing that's on the top of my mind is our bond for BUHS that we had taken out many years ago will be terminating somewhat soon. I forget if it's 2 years or 2 years? 2024. So potentially that could offset a little. That's a large payment that we're making each year, I think about $1 million. But at the same time, we're talking about taking other bonds out, right? So I think it's just really important as we move forward with decisions to expand our capacity as a school district, we not just retract, but we think really critically, because retraction isn't good for innovation. We want to be a place where, our education's expanding and opportunities are expanding. But we just need to make sure that they're expanding in a place that doesn't put us over the cap in the future. So thinking strategically, but also in a way that the taxpayers can afford. So it's that balancing act. And time.
I said there's not enough time to answer this question, unfortunately. Communication is vital. And keeping our schools the way they are, small, where our kids are able to get the small in terms of classroom size, to get the education that they need. That's going to be an incentive for people moving to this area. We want to have vibrant schools that are innovative and a drawing point, because getting people to this community is how we're going to really make sure that our community, not only our schools, but our communities thrive. And we need to work with select boards and area businesses to make that happen. And we will have to be innovative in terms of, financially as well, and looking at all possibilities and seeing how we can maneuver to make sure that we keep all of our schools open, because they're all of our schools now. It's not just this, this town's or this town's. We're responsible for every child, and we need to think that way.
So this question makes me realize that I haven't given any of my professional resume tonight. I did a stint as the food service director here at BAMS and BUHS, and then got promoted to the Conval district in Peterborough, which was a great experience and relates to this. It was 11 schools, 5,000 students, geographically massive, and my office was in the central office, so I was privy to a lot of conversation, and I asked a lot how it was that they were keeping these little tiny rural schools with a sometime enrollment of only 47 students open, and the district was really committed to it. The collective thought, somebody said, and I wish I had invented this, is that it's important to keep all these schools really vibrant and involved because they're all tributaries of the same river. And I think that if we can keep something like that in mind here and really appreciate the value of these little schools, because these kids were getting such amazing attention being small schools and in their community and not on the bus for an hour to get to school and things of that nature. I think it's something, I can't see any reason why we can't do that here, because we are all sending the kids to often, almost everybody's coming to BUHS at some point. In addition to that, I'm not saying that I'm a big fan of like giant budget cuts, but I'm excited to look at the budget. I think there's a lot of places where money could potentially be saved in ways that make improvements, not in ways that take things away from kids. So I'm a big spreadsheet budget type of person, and I look forward to seeing what we might be able to do to reallocate dollars. Okay, I'm done. Okay, thanks.
I'm not so sanguine about the student population in the future. I don't see a reversal of the decline in student population in the country, in the state. Administratively speaking, I've been in institutions that have been ordered by the board to cut your budget by 10%, and the worst way of doing it is across the board cuts. It's politically safe, but it just doesn't make good sense. So you have to cut it strategically, and strategically, you look at where the least harm can be. And this is going to be an incredibly difficult decision, but it has to be done with complete transparency. I can see this happening in 2022, which is why I'm running for a one-year position. But that was hilarious. And that was I am, and that was an excellent and very heavy question there.
So I need everybody to get a chance at one question before we do second questions. Yeah. So who's our last question of the evening while Liz says her last 3-second thing?
Okay, it's not for the school board, but it's for the select boards. We need to invest in housing that people can afford to buy. There are so many people who want to move to this area and can't afford to buy a home because they're all just way too expensive. More affordable housing is always good, but we need, for our towns to look at what their, our village center is basically full in Putney. We need to look at other areas. So
good point.
There's a project for you, Jamie.
Okay, we have time for one last question. Let's see if somebody hasn't had a first question opportunity before a second. So seeing none, I see a second question. Be merciful. It's our last question. Oh, wait, I'm not giving this to you.
Yeah. It's an easy question. That's 3. Paul Normandeau again. Now that you've started talking about money, which is my favorite topic, you are the guardians of the purse. And what I've noticed happening throughout the state with mergers is that administration has a tendency to, sorry, Tim, has a tendency to proliferate. And what I would encourage you, and it's more of a statement, I guess, than a question, that you keep an eye on administration, because that's not where the money should be going. The money should be going to the kids, to the people who are on the front lines of education. And now we need a certain amount of administration, but we don't need it to keep. I got a position this year. Now I need an assistant next year. We don't need that kind of thing. And there's been several positions that I think that have been created in this district that, as a citizen who's not fully aware of the ramifications or why it was done, that I don't think needed to be done. And I would encourage the board to take a good hard look at those.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll tell you, there's definitely, I definitely believe in cutting waste. I believe in finding where things are being spent that don't need to be spent, not because we want to reduce what we're spending overall, but because we want to reallocate it to something that's useful. But from a position of like what my values are, I don't think we're investing and spending enough in public education. So we're having this false question that's being put on our society of like, what are we going to cut? We should be expanding. We should not be talking about what we're going to take away from developing children. And that's what was being forced on us with Act 46 and in general, like in politics right now. We should be talking about how can we increase public education and what more can we give to our children? I think we're being given the wrong decision right now.
Okay, well, yes, administration tends to grow. Everybody seems to know that. So I'm not sure. I've noticed positions added at our SU level, and I'm not sure that they're needed. And we are looking for a new superintendent, but I would encourage any new superintendent to speak with John Castle, who is the superintendent of North Country Supervisory Union, over 500 square miles of territory that he covers. And his answer to that question was, I trust my principals. So their SU costs are minimal compared to most places. So there's part of the answer right there. Oh, you're welcome.
Tara Castine Putney. I hate to say it, but I love numbers and I hate numbers. My job is numbers. I am a purchasing person for a manufacturer, so I am constantly looking at what the cost of something is and how to figure out how to get the lowest cost or the best product or longevity or all of those myriad of things that pop into your head. And so I'll be looking at the numbers, and I'll be looking at those numbers in a way and how we can meet the needs of every student, because that will be the focus of this, is the students, and how does the budget and how do the numbers add up to equaling an education that is safe, healthy, and provides an education for them. So I'll be looking at the numbers. How can we do it?
Is this still a 1 minute question? Yes. Oh, okay, just making sure. Not because anybody did more than one. I just wanted to make sure I only had a minute. Okay. So it's interesting because everything we've talked about so far and everything we almost always talk about on the school board is expansion. Expansion of programming, expansion after school, expansion of pre-K, not closing schools, which means higher cost per student. So there are positions at the district level that have come into existence, but I guess I think about it as when you want to expand programs, you need somebody to design those and do those programs. And so either we really think about, which in some cases we have, how to make small increases in the budget by hiring more teacher leaders, which I'm totally a proponent of, who can take on some of those administrative responsibilities for new programming, or we'd have to think about somebody managing at the district level. So I would really be a fan. I know in certain schools we've already done that, where there's teachers, leaders leading, different aspects of curriculum development or different professional development series. But maybe looking towards that would help us to not keep expanding at the administrative level if that was one of our values.
I like Tara. I'm a buyer, so I look at numbers every day, millions of dollars every day. It's $51,171,300. That's a big gulp to think about. However, we all have standards that we want for our kids, for our education, and we don't want to take away from their learning opportunities and their potential. So especially with a new superintendent coming in, it's going to be something the board will have to have conversations with, because we don't want to take away from programming. I love Emily's idea with the team, the teacher leaders. That's something that a lot of the schools have used. But we need to be very careful, because we do not want to take away from our children. We want to expand the programming as much as possible. And we just need to look at the numbers to see what can be trimmed in other places.
Just to add to that, a lot of times when a position is created, there's automatic thinking that it has to be full-time. We should think about, well, maybe this position can be 60% or 75%. That's just the kind of thinking we have to do to not just fall into the trap of a new position is 100%. And also it gets back to assessment. We have various positions in the school district. Well, how functional are they? Are they working? I'll be walk on political thin ice here, but we have a diversity coordinator, and the public wants a diversity coordinator, and I'm all for it too, but is that position functioning well? Again, it gets to assessment. So again, I'm all for diversity, and the person in that position may be doing a great job, but it's just a question of, well, we put in a position in a new position, how well is it functioning? And is it needed at 100% or 90%? And that gets me in trouble.
Only with the moderator. So it's time for us to wrap up. I want to talk about the calendar. The calendar coming up. Today is February 11th, the same day as the New Hampshire primary, for those of you looking across the river. Then we've got, I believe the next thing on the calendar is March 10th will be our budget info session that we'll be having. Remind me all the details. Does anyone remember?
6 p.m. at the BUHS Gymnasium.
6 p.m. at the BUHS Gymnasium on March 10th. We'll have childcare. That will be a great place to ask questions about the $51,300 budget. Then the following week, March 17th, St. Patrick's Day at 6 p.m.
You know what? I think the March 10th is actually in the multi-purpose.
Okay, so go to the Windham Southeast School District website, because I didn't write my notes down, and look for the dates. March 10th is going to be our budget info session. It'll tell you when and where. Okay. So March 10th is going to be the budget info session at BAMS. I was inaccurate before. And then the following week is March 17th, and that will be St. Patrick's Day. That will be the annual meeting, and it will be a really critical time for all of the folks in Guilford, Brattleboro, Dummerston and Putney to show up to vote. So all voters need to be showing up to vote on the budget and participate in those critical discussions for things like diversity programming that's so critical for our districts. So anyway, I just want to say, and then what else is there? Oh, childcare will be provided on March 10th and March 17th. So yeah, questions? Yes, we announced those at the beginning, but don't forget to vote March 3rd. And then early voting starts tomorrow for folks who can't vote for school board positions. But there will be an Australian ballot, and each of the town clerks have all the information you need on voting day on March 3rd. So any other things, questions from Jody?
Yes, I have a concern, and it involves around coming to one of these places at the high school. I'm very familiar with the area, coming to all the meetings. I've not been in this building before, wasn't sure where it was until I asked the superintendent how to get here. I'm wondering if there's something a little more visible, a little more that most people who are not involved in school, who do not have middle schoolers or high schoolers, if there's some place that's really very, like Green Street School maybe, or that was more visible than the high school for some of these meetings. And I'm wondering, I mean, I know one of our members came here late, he probably was wandering around the middle school room.
I went to the basketball gym first.
So what I'm hearing, if the BCTV isn't picking it up, is that there's a concern about, as we go through this process, it wasn't stated as such, but it's been my experience, as we go through this process of centralized meetings for those of us who are traveling from the villages and we don't necessarily know the meeting location, how are we going to make sure that people know where they're going, how they're getting there? And so it sounds like a signage issue. And it,
I mean, even Brattleboro, if you don't have a kid
yeah.
in school,
Yeah.
you're not going to know
Yeah.
the middle school.
So I'll tell you from the Communication Council perspective, because I have gotten lost in almost all the buildings, that I have made sure that we have put in our press releases some level of breakdown of information, not even saying BAMs. I mean, when people said BUHS and BAMs, I was like, what are you talking about? We were always talking about the Cusick room. I Googled Cusick. I couldn't find Cusick room anywhere. So one of the things I've done is I've broken everything down to say the Cusick room in the Windham Regional Career Center at this address. That problem is you get there and then sometimes the doors are locked by the time. So I think if people have some creative solutions, it's going to take volunteer time. So right now I'm volunteering on the Communications Council to write press releases, to get them out on every social media, every radio, every written newspaper that we can possibly do it, get it on our website. So if people have time and energy and want us to help solve that problem, I think it's a really good point and I appreciate your time. Yeah.
Use like the signage. I know like Booster Club we have just for sports, and you could put a piece of paper over them, and with arrows saying meeting this way, and you could put those up in just not sporadically, but in certain areas just with arrows, like if it's coming to BAMs at the line. I think I can check to see if we have some in the den.
Okay, I want to wrap us up, so go ahead, Taryn.
I also wanted to maybe suggest a carpool from different towns and a point person for talking about carpooling. So if you can nominate one person to be like, hey, I'm coming from Guilford and I would like to ride, you know who to call, because they normally come to the meetings. I know in Putney, I come to the meetings all the time. Jamie, Ellen, Ruby, we're always here, and Liz. So we have plenty of people that are willing to carpool if that's if you're looking for that.
Yeah, that's great. So that means if somebody wants to contact me, Jamie Comtois, you can tell me you're going to centralize your volunteering for outreach on signage and getting carpools to our annual meeting and such. That would be great. Did you have some?
I appreciate your detail. I needed that detail at the last meeting, I think with the last special education meeting, because it didn't have the address and, And I have small kids, so I've never been in these buildings before. I didn't even know where the main entrance was. And the lights, it was kind of dark, so it didn't look like there was anything here. So I don't know if there's any way.
One idea could be taking, like, I couldn't go on the website because I have no cell service, but I was looking for a picture. So maybe just even a picture of what the main entrance, it's very dark out there, but if I'm here during the day, I could take a picture, but maybe someone who works or goes here could do that.
Oh my gosh, that was multi-town problem solving. That was great. So I want to wrap us up. I think I heard some great solutions. And so Jody, let's all come over here, all you two, you, and let's make a plan, because we got like 20 days or something to make a plan for increasing visibility and outreach.
But I want to also say the majority of the people here are from the other towns. So we need to have some meetings in the other towns.
I'm going to let our current chair of the Windham Southeast School District wrap us up.
Well, I just want to publicly thank all the hard work that Jamie Contois put into putting this all together, and really publicly acknowledge all her communications, and you see her spirit and her energy that she brings to the job. It's been a pleasure to have her helping out the board, and it's the volunteer spirit that keeps this district growing and continuing on. So I really just want to thank you personally and publicly. Thank you, Jamie.
That was nice. I also want to shout out to a superhero tonight. I don't know. Jackie was just an amazing mom. She's gone, I think, right? And I watched her taking care of her baby so carefully during this whole session of an hour and a half at bedtime. So just a shout out to all of us parents who have somebody taking care of somebody and are able to and are taking care of folks ourselves. So anyway, thanks to everyone for being here tonight. And please help us get the word out. Go to the Windham Southeast School District website and get out all the candidate questionnaire links, please, as well as go to BCTV as of Thursday, February 13th, and share that link with this candidate forum. Have a great night.